Alright guys, today we're going to talk about quadratic inequalities. It's going to take what we've been doing, then adding a concept that we're familiar with. So the first thing that we're talking about when we're talking about inequalities, remember there's two things that inequalities deal with. You have to deal with line type and shading. So remember for shading, if it's a greater than sign, it's going to shade above. Okay, and if it's a less than sign, we're going to shade below. Okay. Now for our line type, remember if it's a greater than or equal or greater than or less than, it's going to be a dotted line. If it's greater than or equal to or less than or equal to, it's going to be a solid line. So let's go ahead and take a look at this example. All right, so I'm going to graph this like I normally would. I'm going to make my XY table. So -2, -1, 0, 1, 2. I'm going to square those numbers to get 4, 1, 0, 1, and 4. Now, there's no a value, so I'm not going to multiply my y values by anything, but the +4 tells me that I'm going to go left 4, okay, and the -3 tells me that I'm going to go down 3. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and plot those points. And then on the other side. Now I'm going to shift all those points to the left 4, down 3. Okay, and I'm going to go ahead and now I'm going to take a look that this is a solid line, so I'm going to draw a solid line. Okay, and now I know that notice that it is a greater than sign, so I'm going to shade above. So if it helps you to kind of draw an arrow from the vertex, okay, well that's on the inside, so now I'm going to shade above, which is going to be all of this stuff in here. Okay, and that is our final graph. And notice how I pretended like these lines would go on forever. Okay, so I kind of didn't shade outside of if those lines kept being extended. Alright guys, so this inequality I notice is in standard form, so I need to put it into vertex form. So that means I need to find my h. So we have to do opposite of b, so over 2a. And so opposite of -4 is +4. Over 2 times my a, which is -1. Well, 2 times -1 is just -2, so 4 divided by -2 is -2. So now I'm going to plug that back in to find my k value. So that's going to be negative and -2 squared minus 4 times -2 plus 3. Okay, when I plug that in, I get 7, so that's going to be my k value. So I have y is less than, my a was -1, so if -1, then x minus h, so +2. Remember that's the opposite, and then just +7 for my k. All right, now I can go ahead and make my table. -2, -1, 0, 1, and 2. So then square those, so 4, 1, 0, 1, 4. Now my a value is -1, so I'm going to multiply all these by -1. So I get -4, -1, 0, -1, and -4. Okay. Now I'm going to go ahead and I notice that it's +2, so that tells me it's going to go to the left 2. The +7 is going to be up 7. And then this less than sign tells me it's going to be dotted since it's not equal to. Okay, remember, sometimes writing that helps us remember. So I'm going to go ahead and put my graph, so make my parent function. Remember, if you don't need to put your parent function, you don't have to put it. You can just shift it if you kind of see that. But there's our parent function, and I'm going to shift all my points to the left 2, up 7. Okay, so I shifted all my points. Now I notice that it is a dotted line, so I'm going to put a dotted line. Okay. And the last thing that I need to look at is where to shade. Well, it's a less than is below, so I'm going to shade kind of my vertex below would be this way, so I'm going to shade below my graph, which is going to be right here. Okay. Now if you don't extend your lines all the way, that's fine. Just make sure though that when you shade, you won't shade where it would actually cross the line. And it is okay to shade over your parent function. Remember, the parent function is just a kind of a tool to help you. All right, so if I take a look at this, we're going to work backwards. Okay, so first thing I need to figure out is what sign to use. Well, it's a solid line, so I know that it's going to be either less than or equal to or greater than or equal to. And then I notice that it is shaded above, so I know I'm going to use the greater than or equal to sign. Okay, so now we're going to do y is greater than or equal to ax minus h squared plus k. Okay, so now I just need to figure out what a, h, and k are going to be. Well, I notice that I go over 1, but I go down 1. So that tells me that my a is going to be negative 1. Okay. Now our h is left to right. Well, I notice that usually I start at 0, 0, but I'm shifted to the right 3. So that tells me that my h is 3. Now my k, I didn't go up or down at all, so I don't have a k value. Okay, so when I go to write this, I have y is less than or equal to, my a was negative 1. Well, it's going to be x, and since it went to the right 3, it's going to be minus 3. Okay, squared, and then no k value, so I don't need to put something there. That is my final answer. Now the last exit ticket is, what is the difference between quadratic equation and a quadratic inequality? Well, we know that equations are equal signs. Inequalities are less than, equal to, greater than, or less than, greater than or equal to, or greater than signs. So the big difference, though, is line type and shading. That's our big difference between inequalities and equations.